Thank you, Alan. Nice to get doubly introduced. And it's so great to be back here in the Bronx, particularly on a very busy news night, to get a break from the newsroom for a couple of hours, to return to the very place where I was born. Yep, everyone asks me, am I a Bronx kid? Sure I am. This is about 10 blocks north of here. Mount Eden and Townsend, that was my neighborhood. I tell you, there must be something in the Bronx water, because it produced more people in broadcasting, celebrities and comedians. Just to mention a few, there was Regis Philbin, Danny Aiello, Gabe Pressman, Vince Scully, Mike Kay, and Bob Papa. Robert Klein also, who you inducted, I believe, last year. So many memories back here. When I think of the Bronx, and I wrote some notes here, as I look back on my formidable years, it's really a kaleidoscope of images that fill my memory bank. And some of those memories are of senses and sight, sound, smell, or politically correct, aroma of the neighborhood where I grew up. Unlike the sweet-smelling daylily, which is the official Bronx flower, the scent that still tantalized me is that of the pastrami and corned beef, sauerkraut and sour pickles wafting from Moscow's delicatessen and Jack's appetizing store on Mount Eden Avenue. And they emanated through the building, the sixth-floor tenement at 1585 Townsend Avenue. They were the aromas that set our building apart from any other building on the block. And those of you who have been here long enough, you know there are sounds indigenous of the Bronx, of the neighborhood, like high cash clothes, the weekly refrain from the used clothing buyer, or remember the cry, Seltzer Man, pronouncing the arrival of our weekly supply of gaseous water, and of course another delivery of chocolate syrup. How many of you remember what that chocolate syrup was? You bet, you are right. I have special remembrances of that building on the corner of Mount Eden and Townsend. It wasn't a tenement, it was more like a commune, a kibbutz. You know, our neighbors, they weren't neighbors, they were more like members of our own family. Now, my career in the news business, you can say it all began right here in the Bronx, and often I'm asked, how did you get that deep voice and learn how to project? Well, I had good training. It started in the Bronx with my booming news bulletins shouted from the window of my fourth-floor apartment. Hey, Danny, the Yanks won. Okay, the voice a little higher and nasal back then. But my journalistic career actually started from the ground up, as in walking up. I'd schlep a little red wagon with creaky wheels along the Grand Concourse, particularly on Sunday mornings. I'd wake up the whole neighborhood as I would deliver the Bronx home news, go from one building to another. When I was a kid, I had a passion for photography. My camera was like a part of my appendage. At the age of 13, I chased police cars and fire engines and took pictures until one day I snapped a picture of a raging inferno on Mount Eden Avenue. It was a catering hall. Flames belching from about a dozen windows, and I got a great photograph before anyone else, before even the fire engines got there. And I sold it to the Daily News, and they gave me, I brought it down to the building, and they gave me a $2 messenger fee. Then the next day the picture appeared in the centerfold of the Daily News. I got a check for $25 plus a story and a credit line about student fines, PIX pay. Wow, this was great to supplement my $2 a week allowance. It was wonderful. And when I got back to the corner where my building was, all the neighbors, of course, standing out there and held back by the police lines, and asked me what happened. And I was telling them everything I saw. And you could say that was my very first newscast back at the age of 14. So many fond memories. Saturday night date. What was a Saturday night date like here in the Bronx without going to the Lowe's Paradise? How many of you have been to Lowe's Paradise? Ah, you know what I'm talking about. That cavernous place with the glittering stars up there, remember the popcorn, everything else? I got my necking training up in the balcony, or as Robert Klein often says, a lot of DNA left up in that balcony. You got a good laugh on that one too. And we would go afterwards. What's a Saturday night after Lowe's Paradise without going to Crumbs and getting a frap or an egg cream? Ever figure out why they call it an egg cream? There's not even an egg in it. And then the whole check would come out to maybe $2, and that was with the tip. Incredible back in those days. Also, I remember my Jewish upbringing. Yeah, I'm a Jewish kid from the Bronx. And I remember going to Cheder, Mount Eden Center it was called, on Morris Avenue, and right down from where Levin Hospital is. And until that day where it finally came and I was the bar mitzvah boy. And, you know, the neighborhoods have changed in recent years. I remember Kosher Bosher on Mount Eden Avenue. I drove by there a couple of years ago. It's now pig's feet and pork loin. The whole area has changed. So, you know, looking back at it all, there are so many of those Kodak moments, images forever frozen in my mind. The days growing up in the Bronx, they were innocent, they were so impressionable. My surroundings were filled with love and hope for the future, you know, feelings that really had a great influence on my life and helped motivate me to achieve my goals. I had a dream growing up, and I'm still living that dream, and I'm blessed for that. Growing up in the Bronx, I could say in the 50s, well, they were wonderful years, and I have great remembrances of it. So I'm still here in spirit, and I'm proud that I'm, in a way, physically here, just about 6 or 7 blocks south of here, where a street sign hangs from a lamppost, and I'm honored to be a part of the Bronx Walk of Fame. So,
So I want to give you a quick picture. This thing called the Bronx Jewish Historical Initiative, how did it start? It had to do with Sheldon Lobel, the borough president, and myself, coming together at an event that you had, actually. And I said to the borough president, I started groups in Brooklyn and Manhattan. He said, so what about the Bronx? I said, I was getting to that. He said, not fast enough. You got to sit down and meet with Paul Del Duca and move it. The intention of this group is very simple, and you all know it. There's a proud history of the Jewish community of the Bronx. In the 40s and 50s, there were more Jews in the Bronx than in Israel. It's extraordinary, extraordinary. And the things that people did in those days and continue to do to this day need be recognized, need be remembered. The world needs to know about it. Now, you must realize 20 years ago we couldn't have done this. We didn't have technology. Now we do. We got the web, we got social media, we got all of those outlets. So the idea of putting together the story of the Bronx Jewish community and getting it out to the world, that for the first time they're going to say, boy, we always heard people say my years in the Bronx, but now we're living it together with them. This is a legacy project. It'll be around for the next 100 years. It's interactive. The one thing that hasn't been mentioned is www.thebronxjewish.org. You should remember it and go to the site. It's really quite wonderful, to tell you the truth. So this is continuing interactive. What that means is you all have your assignments after you leave. You're supposed to go on the website. You're supposed to go to share your story. You're supposed to then, for 200 words, tell your upbringing, other things, how you're living in Riverdale now, what it's like. So everybody will know. Send in pictures. And then came along the idea of the Bronx Jewish Hall of Fame last year. What's that about? That's about there are these people, and we had an extraordinary group last year. I can't say enough about who we're going to be honoring. You'll hear about tonight. They deserve recognition at a standard that's incomparable. It's worldview, really. And from that point of view, this is the Bronx. This is what we've been able to accomplish with freedom in America. This is what we've been able to accomplish in a city like New York, of working together shoulder to shoulder with people of all backgrounds. And our contribution isn't only to the Jewish community, it's to all communities in our reach out. It's been amazing, and they've been good to us. And we shouldn't take it for granted, because in our 5,000 years as Jews in this world, we've had very few civilizations that have been as good to us as America, and we need to recognize that, we need to be proud of it, and we need to tell that story. We wanted to do something with Israel, and we wanted to do something that connected the majority Latino community now of the Bronx together with Israel, and I actually reached out to Danny Ayalon. He put me in touch with people who connected us to Kibbutz Mefalsim, started by Uruguayan and Argentinian Jews in 1949, Spanish-speaking community, and this morning we got a video from them that sets up the sister community relationship that we're very proud of between the Bronx and the kibbutz in Israel. I want to just make one more comment about this. You should know that the kibbutz is located in the Negev, right next to Gaza. The first picture you saw was a picture from the kibbutz of Gaza City. So you understand what they've gone through, who they are, what kind of people they are, and we couldn't be more proud to have them as partners. So I turn it back to Marvin.
Thank you, Howard. Turning it back to me because it gives me the great pleasure to make the next introduction. A man who's at the helm of the Bronx, which is the size of many small cities, but he's done more than just being at that lead desk. He has transformed this borough into a magnificent borough in the last couple of years. There's been literally a renaissance here in the Bronx. And the Grand Concourse, he's restored some of the grandeur to the Grand Concourse, which I'm sure you all know is patterned after the Champs-Élysées in Paris. It's all the magnificent efforts of the man at the helm, the borough president of the Bronx, Ruben Diaz-Jr.
Howard was right. I don't know if many people know, but in the late 1940s and in the 50s, the Bronx had north of 650,000 Jewish residents, more than the state of Israel. And of course, we know that the numbers have come down, but I'm proud to say that over the last several years, that number has gone up. We are now about 53,000. That's up almost 10,000 extra Jewish residents in the borough of the Bronx, which I consider God's country, and that's always good news. And the reason why I have wholeheartedly supported this initiative is because since I was a boy, many of you know Reverend Diaz, my father, Reverend Diaz, who is a Pentecostal minister. I remember his church on Seward Avenue having the Star of David. I remember when, and asking, what's that, why is that here as a very young boy, and my father explaining to me how that church was a synagogue before that. Fast forward, as a young assembly member, I'm in my 20th year now as an elected official, but when I first got to the New York State Assembly, my office on Manor Avenue was a synagogue. And so it made sense, that coupled with the fact that I've been to Israel with Michael Miller and JCRC twice. I've been doing a lot of work making sure that the Latino and Jewish community and our bond continues to grow and strengthen. The fact is that in Latin America, there's a robust Jewish community, and we need to recognize that. We also need to make sure that we defend the Jewish community in Latin America against when there's anti-Semitism. We always talk about that in the United States. We talk about it in Europe and in the Middle East, but we seldom call it for what it is when we see it in Latin American countries, and we have to do more in terms of educating folks and bringing that to light. But so my point is this, that as the borough president, we've done a lot of great work here in the Bronx. Life isn't perfect, but we are headed in the right direction. And so there's been a lot of economic development. We've seen over $10 billion invested in our borough. We've seen over 54 million square feet of development in the last 7 years alone. We've cut unemployment by more than half. We went from 14.2% to 6.6%. And so a lot of folks are giving us the recognition that we deserve today. When Howard Teich came to me and Marty came to me with this initiative and Sheldon Lobel, it made sense, because if we are headed in the right direction, then we have to pay homage to those who were able to set a solid foundation, so that even in the days when we were not doing so well, that foundation was strong enough for us to be where we are today. And the Jewish community, many of you here and so many who are not in this room, helped lay that solid foundation. You helped lay it in many different ways, whether it's through being educators, being activists and celebrities and spiritual leaders, business owners, property owners, affording new folks coming from all over the planet into our borough the ability and the opportunities to educate themselves. And till this day, there's so many people in your community who still offer those opportunities to the people of the Bronx. I see Simon Bergson here, who employs hundreds and hundreds of people, if not thousands, many of them from the Bronx, most of them not Jewish. And so, and we have to be thankful for that. When you see what Brad Silver does and the services that they provide here in the Bronx, where they service thousands and thousands of people, most of them not Jewish. The Hebrew Home, where we just had a visit from former President Bill Clinton, serviced hundreds and hundreds of people in the later stages of their lives who need that attention. Most of them are not Jewish. So the relationship is still strong. And we have to celebrate that. And then that coupled with the fact that we get to do fun things like highlight areas in former synagogues where people need to know that have become other things today, but that they should know what it used to be. When we get to induct people to the Bronx Jewish Hall of Fame, one of them is our just recently inducted Bronx Walk of Famer, Arlene Alda, who's with us here today. We just had a good time doing Bronx Week. One of our latest Bronx Walk of Famer inductees. The other gentleman is Lloyd Ultan, who is the Bronx historian. Boy, do I love hanging out with him. And of course, you have Linda Kaplan, and you have Avi Hoffman, and you have Ezra Levin. It's great to have you all here today. I am so proud to be a part of this, and let me just leave you with this. Not only is this telling the story of how strong the Jewish community still is in my beloved borough, but I think it goes a long way in making sure that we all come together to ensure a safe and protected Israel. I was so proud to have joined the governor in his statements the other day when he said that any group who joins the BDS boycott of Israel will not be able to participate in state business. As a proud Latino, I know that the country, the population of Latinos will continue to grow in this country. It is important that the Latino community, that every other community understand how important Israel is to us. And it's important that we continue to defend and protect Israel. That is the reason why I do this. When I was in Israel, I saw how Israel pays homage to the Latino community as well when we visited an elementary school, and it had the Guatemala Elementary on it. When I asked the question, Michael, why does it have Guatemala as the name of the school? And this was in Jerusalem, and they said that in Jerusalem, many of the elementary schools are named after those Latin American countries that voted in the United Nations for Israel to become recognized as a state and as a nation. And so we need to continue that synergy. This does exactly that. Go on the website, go tell your story. It is important for us to continue to tell the world how great the Bronx is and the different communities that allow for that to happen. And certainly the Jewish community is one of those communities. God bless you all, and congratulations to the honor tonight.
Okay, continuing with the program and our inductees now, I'm going to call each of them up one at a time and ask each of you to please make very brief remarks and receive your award, and then we'll have a chance to talk a little further in the panel discussion, your remembrances of the Bronx and the Jewish heritage and so forth. So let me begin by introducing Linda Kaplan Thaler. Linda grew up in the Bronx, now a member of the Advertising Hall of Fame. She is responsible for some of America's most famous and award-winning campaigns, including, you remember, Aflac, the Aflac Duck. She has composed jingles that are among the industry's gold standard, including I Don't Want to Grow Up, remember that one? I'm a Toys R Us Kid, and of course, Kodak Moments.
Time out. You gotta say that. I don't want to grow up.
I don't want to grow up.
I'm a Toys R Us kid.
Oh my God, I won't grow up. Remember that song, right? Okay. And, well, Linda is Phi Beta Kappa, magna cum laude, graduate of CCNY, currently sits on the advisory council for the Colin Powell School at CCNY. Linda Kaplan Thaler, inducted. Thank you.
When I look around at the esteemed nominees, I must say you all look really familiar. Did I pass by your blanket at Section 10 of Orchard Beach? Were you also soaking yourself in iodine while frying yourself up with that aluminum reflector? Did I catch you at Alexander's when they had that sale on polyester sweaters? Did you also order a mini chocolate chip birthday sundae, that free one from Jan's? I did that birthday sundae on a monthly basis, which would make me about 147 now, although I'm still only in my incredibly late 20s. How about that? I think the reason you all look familiar is because of all the amazing accomplishments that you have had, the first of which was to actually leave the Bronx, something many of us tried to do when we were growing up. And with those accomplishments, you fulfilled your oath of Tikkun Olam. You are leaving this world in a better place than the way you found it, not that you are leaving anytime soon. I think we all know what the Bronx gave us. Actually, nothing in the way of symphonic halls and theater and great, great libraries. Like many of you, I had a public school education and attended a public university, City College. My talented husband, Fred, went to Queens College, and I constantly remind him that he married up. So we had to create our own music, our own stories, our own plays, act in our own theater. And boy, what has that produced? Which all goes to show, from nothing comes a whole lot of something and a whole lot of somebodies, like the amazing people I'm so honored to be with tonight. Ogden Nash, you had it all wrong. The Bronx, many, many, many thanks. Thank you.
Congratulations, Linda. Arlene Alda. Arlene grew up in the Bronx as well. She's a professional clarinetist clarinetist, as well as an award-winning photographer and writer. She's the author of 19 books, keeps her very busy. Many of them children's books illustrated with her photographs. Her latest book, this is one for the older folks, Just Kids from the Bronx, Telling It the Way It Was, an Oral History. It's an incredible book, and I had the good pleasure of interviewing her and her husband on one of my programs last year about the Bronx. And their stories about growing up in the Bronx. They're based on interviews with 63 accomplished women and men, ranging in age from in their 80s to their 20s. And as they say, behind every successful woman, there is a very talented man, and that is Mr. Arlene Alda. We're delighted to have him with us. But the honor tonight goes to Arlene Alda. Congratulations.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for being here. Congratulations to the other honorees. I'm really, truly proud to be a girl from the Bronx. You know the old saying, you take the girl out of the Bronx, but you'll never take the Bronx out of the girl. You know, I've been pondering what it means to be from the Bronx. And in particular, in my own case, there was a coming together of very, very good fortune and what I call luck. Now, I know that many of us don't believe in luck. It's been described, luck has been described as taking the opportunity or recognizing opportunity when it knocks, and therefore you feel lucky. But I have to tell you, there are some things that are just plain dumb luck, and that's my life. My parents, Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe, had the luck to meet one another after World War I and settle in the Bronx. How lucky is that? Secondly, and no one had anything to do with it. That's where they wanted to go. It was a new borough. It was a vital borough. And they moved up north to where the subway lines had been extended in the northeast. Second lucky thing, I was born, that certainly is lucky. I had nothing to do with that. And I was born at a time when my family was settled. The year was 1933. Had I been born elsewhere, my history would have been much, much different. Had I been born in Europe, I don't think I would be standing here today. But the fact of the matter is, I was born as the third child in our family, and as a third child, good things accrued to me because I think my parents were so tired of keeping my brother and my sister together that by the time I came along, everything was okay. You know, I could do whatever I wanted. And that meant I could go out and play. Playing, that was gorgeous. The other lucky things, I had nothing to do with the fact that I went into a functional school system where we learned. Now, I can tell you some of the teaching was horrific, and I'm sure there are better teachers there today than when I went, but we did learn, and how lucky was that? And in high school, another good fortune, another lucky thing happened, and that was because it was just after World War II, there were many teachers, and a lot of them men, who came back from the Army wanting a secure living. They were people who had experience in the world, who happened to love teaching and were very, very knowledgeable. And I can mention several of the people in the history department, the English department, and for me especially the music department of a public high school, Evander Childs High School, that took this eager kid and nurtured me. How lucky was I? And then lucky enough to go to a public college, Hunter College, where, yes, where we got an outstanding education and where the cost was $4 a year, a bursar's fee, $4. I never understood where the expenses of today's schools accrued. How did that happen? We even got our books for free. The books were loaned to us at the end of the course. We gave the books back to the bookstore, and the next class had the opportunity to have the books. This was all pure luck in terms of my way of thinking about it. And another thing, that most extraordinary thing in my life, I think, is that I met a guy who, no, that's not so extraordinary. I met a lot of guys, but this one went to Fordham University in the Bronx. And had he not been to school in the Bronx, we would never have dated, because no self-respecting guy would date a Bronx girl if he lived in Manhattan or even, God forbid, Brooklyn. So how lucky was I that Alan was going to Fordham University when we met. And I indeed feel very, very lucky tonight, as I have felt in the past, to be honored in this particular way, knowing there are so many incredible people from the Bronx who are very, very much deserving of this honor. So I want to thank you very, very much.
Our next inductee is Avi Hoffman. He was born in the Bronx in 1958. Avi was recently nominated for the Drama Desk Award as Outstanding Actor in a Play for his portrayal of Willie Loman in the Yiddish Death of a Salesman. He's executive director of the Dachau Album Project, for which he was invited to the Vatican to meet Pope Francis. He's the CEO of the Mendel Hoffman Foundation, which is now reviving the Joseph Papp Yiddish Theater and is planning the creation of a center for Yiddish culture. Avi Hoffman, congratulations.
Wow, what am I doing here? Ich will sagen, a schönem Dank zu alles, ist a größten Kuvit zu sein, du. Where are the super titles? Me darf nicht. That's Jake Ehrenreich, my best friend, who a year ago I met Howard Teich at the induction at the Brooklyn Jewish Hall of Fame. And how does it feel to be in a minority? I didn't prepare any remarks, but I hear what the other amazing inductees have said so far, and what the borough president so very, very smartly spoke about, which is foundation. I was born about 15 blocks away from here at the Royal Hospital, which they had to tear down after I was born. And I was born to my mother, who was born in a slave labor camp in Siberia. I was born to my father, who survived the Auschwitz concentration camp. And what they dedicated their lives to, and what they instilled in me as an infant and a child growing up right here in the Bronx, was the importance of maintaining our culture. Adolf Hitler murdered 6 million Yiddish-speaking Jews and 6 million non-Jews. And in World War II, 53 million people were killed, men, women, and children. But from the Jewish perspective, the Yiddish language, which lived for 1,000 years, and was such an enormous part of culture here in America and in Europe and in Israel, and suddenly, after World War II, Yiddish became the language of victims, the language of victimization, the culture that everybody wanted to stay away from. Don't speak Yiddish. You know, we speak Yiddish, but we don't want the kids to understand. My parents did the exact opposite. Yiddish is my mameloshen. It's my mother tongue. It was the language that I grew up speaking here in the Bronx, on Bainbridge Avenue, at the Sholem Aleichem Volksschule number 21. We were one of the last bastions of Yiddish language and culture. And so many amazing families came out of that particular block here in the Bronx that have gone on to make such a difference in the world of Judaism and the world of Yiddish. And so once again, why am I here? Not 100% sure. I grew up on Sedgwick Avenue. I went to PS 95. But from the time I was 4 years old, my parents had instilled in me this amazing love, not only of Yiddish language and culture, but also of performance and singing and dancing and acting. And so by the time I was 8, I played as Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof at the Hillman Community Center on Hillman Avenue, right opposite PS 95. When I was 10 years old, I did my first professional acting job in the Yiddish theater, ironically, I just realized, in a show called Bronx Express. So the Bronx has been part of my culture, part of my life, part of my foundation, part of my soul since I was born, and continues to this day. When the Joseph Papp Yiddish Theater, when Joseph Papp finally acknowledged that he was Jewish and reignited his love of Yiddishkeit and gave my mother and I the right to use his name, the Joseph Papp Yiddish Theater, our first production was in the Bronx at the Riverdale Y that Marty Michael worked at for so many years. And now, here we are all these years later. I have worked in my field for many years, and I'm very blessed to have accomplished not as much as Mr. Alda here, but certainly in my own world, I've done so many things. I was so honored to be nominated for a Drama Desk Award for Best Actor in a play, playing Willie Loman in Yiddish. And so, and the day before, actually the same day that happened, my mother and I flew in from Israel, where I directed the same show that we did at the Riverdale Y for the Joseph Papp Yiddish Theater right here, and then for Joe Papp at the Public Theater, Songs of Paradise. So I guess after all is said and done, I will paraphrase what Arlene Alda said so eloquently. You can take the BxJHI out of the Bronx, but you can't take the Bronx out of the BxJHI. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you.
Ezra G. Levin is a resident of Riverdale Ezra is a chair emeritus and senior counsel of the international law firm Kramer, Levin, Naftalis, and Frankel. He's been involved in many civil rights and Jewish communal activities during the course of his active life. Ezra has served as secretary and a board member of the Scholarship, Education, and Defense Fund for the Racial Equality and was co-chair of the New York Coalition for Soviet Jewry. He has served as president of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York and of the Hebrew Free Loan Society, and was the founding chair of a Solomon Schechter High School. Currently, he serves as counsel to the American Friends of Herzog Hospital and is treasurer of the Jewish Communal Fund of New York. Ezra G. Levin.
I do not speak Yiddish, but I know there is an old Yiddish expression, which is, before I say a few words, I'd like to say a few words. I am not a product of the Bronx, but I have been here for 30 years. We moved here from Manhattan, and I was brought up in Flatbush, in Brooklyn. Where I went to school, what was in elementary school, initially called the Hebrew, I think the Hebrew Institute, and later called the Yeshiva of Flatbush. I went to elementary school there, and then went to Midwood High School in Brooklyn. There must be some people here from that place. And I will have other things to say about many of the communal activities of the Jewish community, other communities, and in particular, a memorable experience that I had in connection with the mission for which I was volunteered in November 1974, some 42 years ago, involving a mission on behalf of political prisoners in the former Soviet Union. At that time, it was the Soviet Union. So, rather than take up more time, I will have more to say in connection with the round table, if you will, and I simply want to say that I'm honored to be a part, linked with the other honorees, much more deserving of the award from the Bronx than am I. Thank you all very much for being here.
It's a personal pleasure for me to introduce our next honoree, because he and I were classmates a few years ago. Just a few, right, Lloyd? At Taft High School. We both were at Taft High School. Remember the Taft? Hail Taft High. Remember that theme? Anyway, Lloyd is well known up here in the Bronx. We know all about the history of the Bronx. And if you ever want to know any trivia, we certainly know that the Bronx is only one of 3 places in the world that has the before it. There's the Vatican, the Netherlands, and the or da Bronx, okay? I don't know how I get to be da, but it was named after a guy named Bronk and the Bronx River. He told me this fascinating guy. Over wine and cheese, talk to him, tell you everything you ever didn't want to know about the Bronx, plus what you want to know. There is so much history here, and it's good to be here. So let me get on and introduce Lloyd Ultan. Lloyd was born in the Bronx back in 1938. He still lives here. He was educated in local schools, graduating from Hunter, and it's now called Lehman College, and from Columbia University. All right, we have a couple alumni here. From 1971 to 1976, he served as president of the Bronx County Historical Society, and he serves on its board of trustees. He has served since 1996 as the Bronx Borough Historian officially. His love of the borough is quite evident in the latest publication's title, The Bronx, The Ultimate Guide to New York City's Beautiful Borough. Lloyd Ultan.
When I was informed of this great honor that you bestow upon me, I was asked to prepare a short account of how the Bronx shaped my life. I find that difficult to do since I do not tend to be at all introspective. Nevertheless, I shall try. I was born in the Bronx and I've lived here all my life. For my first 21 years, I resided only 1 block away from this spot, on a ground floor apartment on 165th Street and Walton Avenue. Then it was a largely Jewish neighborhood, but members of other ethnic groups had a noticeable presence. In my building, during the time I lived there, each apartment was inhabited by people from different backgrounds: Irish, Italian, German, Russian, Hungarian, English, Swedish, Black, Filipino, Chinese, and Puerto Rican. We all got along. We celebrated each other's holidays, exchanged food with each other, rejoiced at times of good fortune, and consoled each other in times of adversity. To this day, I do not see any person as coming from a particular ethnic group, but as an individual. I grew up while World War II was raging. All those in the neighborhood worked together to achieve a common goal. To this day, I still feel compelled to work with others to achieve a favorable common result. Everyone in the neighborhood, of whatever background, valued education. Parents took a keen interest in their children's schools, encouraged them to read, and squired them to the city's cultural institutions. All my academic education, from elementary grades through to my collegiate bachelor's degree, occurred in Bronx-based schools. To this day, I still value education as a goal, read voraciously, and attend cultural events. I was always interested in history. Even as a toddler, I asked grown-ups what happened before I was born. I was even a witness to history. I saw Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, and John F. Kennedy campaign on the Grand Concourse. On patriotic holidays, I saw veterans from the Spanish-American War, World War I, and World War II pass me by in parades. Later, my interest in the history of the Bronx was spurred by the Bronx County Historical Society. Yes, it could be said that the Bronx helped make me what I am. However, no one person can accomplish anything all alone. I must credit my colleagues at Fairleigh Dickinson University, where I teach, for providing me with the time to do extensive research. I must also thank the Bronx County Historical Society for making its huge library collection of books, manuscripts, memoirs, photographs, oral history, and maps, and its collection of artifacts and objects available to me to discover the great contributions of the people of the Bronx, from all ethnic backgrounds, they made to advance the borough, the city, the state, the nation, and the wider world. I also thank the Bronx County Historical Society for providing the means that allows me to convey those findings through its publications, lectures, tours, websites, and radio programs. I must also thank Borough Presidents Fernando Ferrer, Adolfo Carrion Jr., and Ruben Diaz Jr. for appointing me to the office of Bronx Borough Historian that enabled me to spread the knowledge of the importance of the Bronx through print and electronic media around the world. Of course, I must also thank my family for encouraging my pursuits and putting up with my crazy schedules. If this great award you have given me is a measure of any success I have had in preserving the heritage of the people of the Bronx and passing it along as a legacy to newer generations, then I am truly grateful for the acknowledgement it represents. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd, and congratulations to all our inductees tonight, and thank you all for being here, and again, thank you for bringing me back to the Bronx. I'm going back to a newsroom for a very busy news night, and I'll see you on the news at 10. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone.
We would be be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to JEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.